Hello everyone and welcome to tackling the 7th grade reading STAAR test. In this video we are going to review some test taking strategies and just talk a little bit about how to take the test on test day. Just some ways to go through passages, some questions to think about as you're reading, things like that. So let's get started. When you get your STAAR test, it should look something like this. Of course, you'll see reading here, not to be confused with writing, okay, which you've already taken. So let's look at a few sample passages together. Pull up the first one. And just to start with, make sure that you always read the directions. I know most of them just say read this passage, but sometimes it might say read the selection. It might say read both selections. Sometimes the wording is different, so it's always important to read the directions. So we have to read the selection and choose the best answer, then fill it out on our answer document. So in order to choose the best answer, we have to do our best reading. So the first thing to look at is really trying to figure out what kind of text you're reading. Are you reading fiction? Are you reading a poem? Are you reading a short story? Are you reading a drama? Or is it more informational or nonfiction, like expository or persuasive? So let's look at this first text and see if we can figure out what type of text we're going to be reading. And from the looks of it, I see some visuals. I also see some bold headings, okay, that kind of tell me what this piece is going to be about, some more pictures. So I'm thinking this is probably going to be informational just from the way it's organized. So if I know I'm going to read an informational text, I need to be thinking about a couple of things as I read. I need to be thinking about main ideas and details. I need to be thinking about how would I summarize this, because I'm probably going to be asked a question about summary. I want to think about the author's purpose. Why did the author write this about Air Force One? I want to pay close attention to the visuals, right? I want to make sure that I look at those. I also want to think about, how is this organized? And what's really going to help you with a text like this, because it happens to be expository, is you've been writing expository essays all year long. So it should be really easy for you to apply those same things you would put in an essay into this text. Let me show you an example. In the first paragraph it says, the most important aircraft in the United States Air Force is a plane labeled VC-25A, better known as Air Force One. This plane has a single and very significant function, to provide air transportation for the President of the United States. So the first thing I notice is here's a thesis statement. The most important aircraft. That's opinionated, right? So there's a thesis. And then what is this going to be about? Well, the significant function of Air Force One, which is providing transportation for the President of the United States. So I know the rest of this article is going to tell me about the different types of services it provides for the President, or functions might be a better word. So again, read it like you would be writing it. You would start with a thesis, you would have some supporting details, right, which would become your body paragraphs. You might have some transition words, things like that. So be looking for those things and be able to separate the main ideas from the details. So if we keep going, we have another visual to look at, and then right here, these bold headings tell us what the paragraph's going to be about. It's kind of like a topic sentence. Presidents have always had to travel, of course. We often see paintings of George Washington sitting on a horse. So again, presidents have to travel. So this is going to tell me about the presidents who have actually flown, according to my heading, on Air Force One. What about down here? Revealing character. Some Washington insiders have noted that time aboard Air Force One can reveal more about a president's personality than a typical day at the White House can. So again, there's that topic sentence. These paragraphs are going to be about how a president acts while aboard Air Force One. And here's some different examples. So make sure that when you're reading an informational text, you pay attention to all of the text features. How is it organized? Does it have bold headings? Are they giving me the main idea of the paragraph? And make sure we pay attention to all of the visuals and how they're labeled and how they add meaning to the informational text. So let's scroll through some of the questions really quick, just so you can see what I was referring to at the beginning. The first question, right there, like I mentioned, it's author's purpose, right? Why did the author write this? So these are things I need to be thinking about. What's the primary purpose of the diagram? Oh, vocabulary question. Let's stop and talk about vocabulary questions for just a minute. Remember, there are different types of vocabulary questions on STAAR. So sometimes you get one that looks like this. Read the dictionary entry for the word disposal. So you already have the excerpt from the dictionary. So for this kind of question, there's no need to use your own dictionary. You already have the definition they want you to use in this box. So don't look it up in the dictionary if it's already been given to you in a box. Okay, now we're going to look at some other questions in a little while that might be different, but in a case like this, you want to use the definition that's provided for you, not the dictionary. Again, we have some main idea, the primary focus of paragraph 7. Here we have a text evidence question where we have to analyze which sentence is an opinion. So we're having to go back to the text and prove which statement is an opinion. Here's some more text evidence. Let me give you one more tip about this type of question. When it says read these sentences from the selection or read the lines from this selection, it might be worded in different ways. And then a box is going to be here, and then there's going to be actual text evidence from the passage. When you get a question like this, make sure that you only answer the question based on what is in this box. What idea does the author communicate with these sentences? Only these sentences. Don't bring in other ideas from the text. Even if you got other things out of it, you can only focus on what is in the box in a question like this. So just make sure if you see questions that ask you to analyze what's in the box, make sure you stick with only what's in the box. Okay? Couple more. Again, we have some main idea questions. And then here's the organization question. How is this organized? So that's always something to be thinking about when you're reading something informational. This is a technique, a comparison you're being asked about here, and again, some more text evidence. So let's talk about the next passage because it looks a little different. Doesn't really look informational, does it? Because I'm noticing some features of this text, which are I have a character list, and I see that this is divided up into scenes, and it has all these little brackets with words in italics, right? Words that are slanted a little bit to the side. So I know that this is going to be a dramatic text, right? Something from a play. So I need to make sure I know who my characters are, and I need to pay close attention to when the scenes change. So notice this is scene 1. And the stage directions are what's written right here. Okay, anytime you see these little brackets, inside of those are your stage directions. That tells the actors what to do, right? Where to go, what the setting is, what it's supposed to look like, and how they're supposed to say their lines. So it's very important that you read those. If you don't, you're going to miss out on what a character might be trying to portray. So always, always read the stage directions. Now, if I scroll down a little bit, I'm going to see it changes to scene 2. So anytime the scene changes, be looking for maybe a change in setting. The characters might change, or they might be in a different place, or talking to different people. So anytime there's a change in scene, make sure we read our stage directions so we know where this scene is set, right? And if we scroll down a little bit more, here's scene 3. So remember, it was raining really hard at the beginning, and now the rain's falling softly. So there's been a change. So just make sure if you see a different scene number that you notice the changes that are taking place in the dramatic text. So we're going to remember to always read our stage directions and make sure we look for a change of scene and make sure we know who our characters are, which are going to be listed in all capital letters in bold over here to the side. Okay, and that tells us who's speaking, because remember each character is going to have his or her own dialogue. So when a character is speaking, that's dialogue. And again, you're going to be asked some questions about what the playwright does. Remember, a playwright is just someone who writes a play. Then there will always be questions about the stage direction, so make sure you pay close attention to those stage directions and the dialogue. Oh, here's another vocabulary question. What does deviated mean in paragraph 13? Well, I don't see a definition there, and some of these words look kind of hard too. Originated? I'm not really sure what that means. So in this case, it'd be a great time to use your dictionary. So make sure that if you don't have a definition or you don't know what all the answer choices mean, make sure you look those words up in the dictionary, because you can't get the right answer if you're not sure what all the answer choices mean. So this time, use your dictionary. Erica's response in scene 1 are important because they show, Again, to know her response, you have to read her dialogue and you have to read her stage directions. So that's one where we have to go back to the text. Again, why does the playwright include stage directions? Again, we have to go back and look at those. Same thing here. They give you the Latin meaning of the word. So you still might want to look it up in the dictionary just to kind of have somewhere to go, a dictionary definition as a reference. But in this case, you still have to go back to paragraph 28 because you've got to make sure your definition fits into the context of that paragraph. So if you get a question that looks like this, you can still use your dictionary, but you also need to go back to the paragraph that is listed there. And again, another question, that's 3 questions so far about stage direction. So it's really important that you read them. And there's another one about dialogue. 18 and 19 are both about dialogue. So again, pay close attention to what the characters are saying. All right, there's one more thing I need to point out about this next text that we haven't seen before. So remember, we always read our directions. Read the next 2 selections, then choose the best answer to each question. So here we go. This time I know when I see read the next 2 selections, this is going to be my paired selection. In other words, I'm going to have to read both of these texts and then answer multiple choice questions that connect them together somehow. So when I read these next 2, I need to be thinking and asking myself, how are these texts alike? What are they both talking about? Are any of the people listed common? Is the subject common between them? How are they different? So make sure you think about those things when you see read the next 2 selections, okay? And again, we've already talked about informational text, but here I can tell again, here's my bold headings. I see lots of different dates, 1890s. Again, I see some more bold headings and a visual. So this is showing me this is informational, probably going to be expository. Now the next one, if I scroll down a little bit, is, as you can see, a poem. But look what I have up here. A Gold Miner's Tale is from Bobby Katz's collection, We the People. In this poem, Katz writes in the voice of Frank Wexler, a gold miner who lived during the era of the Klondike Gold Rush. So it's already told me the speaker in this poem is Frank Wexler, who's a gold miner. So that's something I need to make sure I keep in mind. It's not really the poet talking. In this case, there's another speaker who's a gold miner. So I can tell this is poetry because it's written in stanzas here, and it has line numbers out to the side. Now this is kind of a weird format, right? It's not just your typical stanzas, but you can still tell where there's separation. So even though it's in a strange format, it's still considered a poem that's written in stanzas and verse. Because in this one, we also have a rhyme scheme. Takes, flakes, line, fine. So you really can create a rhythm with this poem. So look to see, are there stanzas? Where are the line numbers? And does this poem have a rhyme scheme? That's a good place to start. Okay. So again, I want to go over the questions for the poem since we've already talked about informational texts. We'll go to the poem. Here we are. You have some text evidence to read from this poem and again have to make an inference. So I want to review inferences really quick. Anytime a question says something like suggests, this line suggests, or maybe the reader can conclude, those are inference questions. Anytime you get a question like this, it means you have to go back to the text. Well, you got lucky in this case because they already gave you the text. But if the text is not here and you get a question like this, the line suggests, you have to go back to the passage, okay, and find your proof. So those are really important. This one's asking about repetition. Here's another line. From this line, the reader can infer. So lots of inferencing with poetry. The main idea of the poem. And here we go. For both selections, you have to understand how they are different. An idea explored in both, meaning how are they alike? And then how could the characters fit together or some of the text evidence fit together? So those are things to keep in mind when you're reading. Okay, we've already talked about informational text, so I'm going to skip down to the last text, which is our fiction piece. And this one, as you can see, has characters, it has a setting, it has a conflict, and somehow our main character, Kirby, manages to overcome that conflict. So remember, when you're dealing with fiction, you need to understand the main, deeper message, that theme of the story. You're also going to want to make sure you look at the characters, how the conflict affects them, all of that. So make sure you read closely, and I wish you the best of luck on your test.